everybody. For our careers event this week, we spoke to Lydia Dutton, who is the Sustainability Manager at the University of Birmingham, and we also spoke to the lovely Maddie Booth, who is the founder of Scrubbee, which is a sustainable skincare business, and she also does some sustainable consultancy on the side. So we hope there'll be plenty of knowledge and experience that you can kind of gain from this little hour-long video. And yeah, come back to it as much as you want. I'll try and timestamp wherever possible in the description so it's easy for you to navigate. But yeah, hope you enjoy.
So, hello everyone. We're here today with Maddie Booth from Scrubbee, asking her some questions about her career journey into sustainability and the sustainability sector, and just generally about your life, Maddie. So we could just get started, I think. The first thing we want to know is about your career journey. Could you tell us about it, what you do now about Scrubbee?
So I graduated from uni last July. I did a degree in politics and global sustainable development, hence the interest in sustainability, and that was at Warwick University. So graduated in July, and basically had like a graduate job secured for September start, but that got like destroyed during lockdown. So then in lockdown I was like, okay, I've had this idea to start my business for a long time now, and I've been working on it for ages, behind the scenes, and I was like, well, maybe this is just like I need to like work on it. It's to show that you can't rely on jobs, basically. So that's what I started doing from about March time, really working on the business, and I took on 3 team members, and they were working like full out with me until the end of last year. So that's kind of where Scrubbee started. So once I lost my graduate job, I worked on Scrubbee, and then I actually managed to secure another job in July. So it was a very stressful couple of months and thinking I was going to be unemployed. But yeah, I started my job in September, and what I do like as a real job is I'm a sustainability officer at Hull College. So I work with like SMEs and help them become more sustainable.
Amazing. And also, for those listening, can you tell us a bit more about Scrubbee and what it is?
Yeah. So what Scrubbee is, it's a female-led new sustainable skincare business. And what kind of makes us different is we focus on repurposing ingredients. So every the main ingredient that we use in our first product line is coffee, which is repurposed from local cafes and takeaways. And then we turn this into our product. So that's kind of the focus around it. So our first product line is utilising coffee, and the first product we brought out was our coffee face scrubs, which we just brought out in the 1st of January. And then we're going to be looking at like what else we can do with the compounds. So next we're looking at a body scrub, a lip scrub, a serum, a soap, and things like that. So we'll have a whole line just around that product that we can repurpose. And then we're going to have a look at other ingredients that we can repurpose and like set a line around those too.
I love that like everybody in this time has kind of like crafted their own jobs because they just like can't find an actual job because of the market being like so rubbish because of Corona.
Literally.
But can you tell us a little bit more as well about like what you do for your actual job that you called it, the proper job, what was it? Is it the sustainability, the sustainability like consultancy, was that?
Yeah. So really, like the job is sustainability officer, but I mainly do consultancy work. So basically how it works is my job's funded by the European Social Fund, still going because even though we've left the EU, which is good. And basically our businesses come through our elevator scheme, which is to help them become like a small to medium or medium to large business. And I'm kind of part of that, and they can get consultancy services. So it's completely free, which is great because I'm kind of in that public sector, but working with small and medium-sized businesses. So it works really nicely because you're not like profiting from them. So they really trust you and like making that connection. But I kind of do that probably about 60% of the job. And then the rest of it, I act as a sustainability officer at the college. So we've got 3 campuses dotted around Birmingham and Stratford, and we've got like 8,000 students. So it's quite a big like university centre, and I work from anything from changing our energy supplier to our waste tender and things like that, down to like student projects and starting new like innovation things with students.
That sounds really nice that you get to actually work with the businesses for free, so it's not like exploitative in any way. But yeah, that's really nice.
It's a good balance of getting like the grounding of sustainability and like the environmental management side of things, as well as like working with businesses, because I've always been more interested in like the business side of sustainability rather than like the kind of waste and recycling side and environmental.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds really nice. So let's start. I've got a couple of like questions from the Google form. So the first one was, what are your top tips for somebody who wants to get into the sustainability sector?
Oh, that's a good one. I think for me it was quite kind of not easy, but it kind of like my degree led me into sustainability, and I feel like if you're at that position where you're at sixth form and you're really interested in it, I would definitely say to have a look at degrees in that section. But if you're past that and now you're like, you've done a degree in something that may not like be completely relevant to sustainability, I think the biggest thing for me was creating networks. So like literally like using like groups like this, I just literally scoured the internet, LinkedIn, Facebook, everything like that, and got involved in as many things as I could, just so that I had those kind of connections. LinkedIn was really good for that because they did like there's quite a few environmental groups on there, and I just like became part of them and chatted to a couple of people. It ended up that a couple of them were in Birmingham, and we now still catch up on certain things and use each other for like certain parts in work. So definitely like networks based, and I'd say the other one is to like really educate yourself, because if you haven't done like a degree in it, sustainability is like literally the biggest thing nowadays. Like there's so much to learn about it. I probably don't even know a quarter of it. So I feel like it can also be quite daunting. So like really like looking at probably the Sustainable Development Goals is the perfect place to start, because you can really look at how sustainability can relate to you personally, you locally, and like further than that. So that definitely like educating yourself and making those networks would be my best tips.
What kind of experience and education are a must for the sustainability sector?
Ooh. You know what? I actually don't think there's any that are a must, because I feel like I don't really know, because I feel like we're still at that stage with sustainability where, like, say for example, me at work, there is no one at work that does sustainability, and no one at work that like understands it completely on like a holistic level. And so I can chat so much rubbish, like, and they'll be like, oh, wow, yes. And so, like, I feel like you're kind of at that place still, which is unfortunate, because everybody should have some sort of education around it, but that won't change for a while. That you can kind of, like, make that of yourself. Like, as long as you're doing your research and things like that, you don't really kind of need that one thing, and that's not that one area that you need to know about. Do you want to repeat the question? I don't know if I answered that.
No, that's yeah. I can like I don't know if I'm supposed to be impartial. I actually completely agree. Like, I just think that whether you like it or not, like, sustainability and like the environmental crisis is a part of every single aspect of life and society, and actually, no matter what you've studied, it's an element that intersects with it.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with coming like from, you know, a point like a physics degree, and then you find out how that degree intersects with sustainability and climate emergency, because it will. Like, no matter what you've done.
Yeah, I feel like for me, when I was looking at what jobs I could get into after uni, I really had no idea. Like my uni was really great in like providing those opportunities and stuff like that, but actually because we were the only second cohort, so it'd only been running a year before I started.
Oh, wow. And
so there's only 1 year of like graduates, and like most of them just went into masters, and I was like, what do I do after uni? Like, what career is there? So when I got to the end, I was like, oh my god, like, what do I do? So I literally just like searched like just jobs in sustainability, and like the like, environmental management or something like that would come up. And I was just like, that's just not me. But I feel like as long as you can find, like, sustainability officer is such a broad title, like, that they gave me out of that work, and I looked at the job description, I was like, but what is that? Like, I don't actually know what I do on a day-to-day basis. And like now I don't have one day which is the same as the other day, so it's great in a way. But I definitely like have a look at job descriptions if you can find them on LinkedIn, and I found that really helpful to know like what sort of thing they're looking for, And then like, even if it's not something that you can even apply to, like anything, it could be like a 60k job that's for like a 50-year-old, but have a look at it and see what kind of the recurring themes are between all of them. And that's how I kind of chose what I wanted to do, because then I'd from those to then find other jobs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like if one mentioned like mine mentioned like business networks and things like that around sustainability, I'd search for like business groups on LinkedIn and stuff like that to get involved with.
I remember you said the other week that you recommend like working with a startup if you like haven't got anything else to do or can't find any other kind of internship work experience. This is like an additional question I'm asking, but why do you think it's so important to like work with startups to get experience in like especially the sustainability sector?
I feel like for me, this is kind of like what I did to get into this sort of career. So I did an internship with the Change Festival, which was like a festival around climate change and raising awareness for like environmental degradation and things like that. And that was insane. Like she put me, like the founder of that put me in touch with so many people, because it was literally her running the whole festival. She literally did the whole thing. And then at each section, she'd bring in different people for certain things, like an arts creative and things like that. And I was like kind of her PA the whole time, like basically just did things that she didn't want to do. But even though at times I was like, I really don't want to be doing this, but it was so interesting because I had that one-on-one with her all the time, and she was the director and the founder, that she then had that respect for me, and she was like, oh, I know she works really hard, I know she does this and this and this, and she's passionate about it. Then she put me in touch with people. So I probably, from doing that internship with her, I probably then made about 30 or 40 connections that I still now have on LinkedIn, and still, like, one of them was my mentor for 3 months to help me with my business. So It's just like, I feel like a startup can really offer you that connection base that you need, because sustainability is still about, it is always going to be about networks and like who you know and what area you work in, because it's always like, it's a local thing that local people work on, local people are passionate about, but it's also a regional thing as well, and obviously local and global, but from like where you want to work. So now I've kind of made my connections in Birmingham. I'm a bit stuck, so I don't really want to move out now because then I'll lose all of them. But no, like it is that way, and people will introduce you to people, and I feel like there's just nothing better than that nowadays, because it's like there's going to be so much competition for jobs when jobs come out, and that's just the reality of the situation. And if you know someone that can get you, even like can recognize your name, or they've told someone about someone and then you pop up, it's going to give you a better chance. I think, like, it's unfortunate that networks have to work that way, but like I was never given, like, I come from a single parent family, like I wasn't like brought up with a silver spoon at my mouth. So it's kind of like you can create those yourself in sustainability, especially with groups like this. Like now I've connected with you two, and me and Holly have already spoke about the climate app and things like that, and yeah, it's just like reaching out to as many people as you can.
And also, there are worse places to be stuck than Birmingham. I'm a big fan of Birmingham.
Yeah, that is a really good point, actually, that in terms of networking, like in this particular sector, I feel like it is quite egalitarian. Like, it's not, you don't have to have like connections through your parents.
Yeah, exactly, which is
like and through,
it's
like,
very inclusive.
It is very inclusive, and like you can really, I think, I mean, I can't say that I know very much about other sectors, but I feel like much more than other sectors.
Definitely, yeah.
You can actually start from nothing and just have an interest.
And I feel like it really drives from passion as well. So like people who I've met through sustainability, I've never met a dull person, because everybody's just like so passionate about their particular area that they work on. And like even people that work in like sustainable finance, I'm just like, wow, you're actually passionate about that. So I just feel like it's just such a nice a sort of world to be in, because everybody just like wants to put you in touch with people because they know that eventually that's going to be better overall.
I think, yeah, an element of it as well is that like we need all the people we can get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like no one's going to ever be turned away.
Yeah, literally.
It's like, you're interested in this, that's great. So welcome aboard.
And also we're planning to have an internship run from February onwards. So at the moment we have Ellen, who works with us, and she's an intern who started back in November and she finishes in February. So we'll be looking for like PR, social, website developer, things like that, ready for February. So if you're interested in getting some like relevant experience of working at a startup, interested in either sustainability or skincare or both preferably, I'll put out some links later in February, so keep a lookout.
Another question from the Google form as well, we might have already kind of touched upon it, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is what skills do you think are most valuable for a sustainability role?
Gosh. Again, sustainability role is such a big word. Like the job I apply for next will probably be completely different to this one. But skills wise, I feel like reading something, like say for example, a lot of the time I'm given like legislation and stuff like that, and I'm like, how does this relate to us? Or like a big problem, like say for example, like we had a talk earlier which was about like decarbonisation in the West Midlands, and then it was like, how does this relate to our college and what can we do? I feel like that's the biggest thing, like in sustainability, because it's such a global problem. Bringing that to what you can do in your job role, in your area, things like that, is such a skill that like I haven't learned yet, and it's going to take time, but I feel like that's probably the biggest skill that you need, kind of rationalizing, I can't even say that word, compartmentalizing, that's the word I meant, and like making a big problem seem not too big, and like actually finding real efficient ways that you can go about it. And that's like the biggest skill within sustainability.
Skills is such like a broad word, isn't it, that you never know, like obviously like Microsoft Excel, that's always good to have. But yeah, like
I wouldn't say any, I mean you definitely need those sorts of skills, but I wouldn't say that, like I'd say this is the biggest thing that I'm finding I need to work on. And I think for me that's like the most important part of a skill, that it's something that you haven't like got already, but it's something that you can develop over time, and it's with experience and it's with like failing and so as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I was wondering, Maddie, so obviously like you have this job in sustainability, and then your side project / Scrubbee, your other job, is also focused on sustainability. Like, do you ever feel like it's too much? Because I sometimes have that where like all my projects now are sustainability related, and then my company, who like my day job is with, wanted me to do something sustainability related. I was just kind of like,
I'm not the guru.
I need a break. Like it's too much. So like, because I'm quite anxious as well, and like sometimes I just need that space. That's
definitely. I definitely have got to points where I've been like, oh my god, like what else can I do? But I have a little side hustle that I do. You can see in the corner there, my like nude paintings that I do. So that's kind of that's my like recuperation and rest stage. So that's kind of turning into more of a business as well. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, that's like how I switch off, because I just don't talk to another human being for like 5 hours, and that's perfect.
I'm not sure if you'll know about this because this is like quite a specific question, but someone asked about like the tendencies and developments that are expected in the next couple of years in like the sustainability sector, and they kind of said like, what do you think will become more relevant in the next few years looking at like sustainability? So whether you know anything about that, I don't know, because it's quite specific.
Things that are like appearing more and more at work, I'm noticing, are, so you know how currently like what we're focusing on around sustainability is the first like section of our suppliers. So say for example, I'll use Scrubbee as an example. So like we get our cardboard boxes, as you can see them in the corner, from a company, but are they manufactured? Are they manufactured at the same place, or is it a different supplier? So like supply chains is definitely a big one that's coming up. And like say for example, our ingredients of Scrubbee, so we get them from a place in Devon called Soap Kitchen, but where do they come from before they're sent to that soap kitchen? So that's a level 2 supplier. And everyone that I'm like speaking to in my like consultancy, and so I'm currently working with 2 salons and Birmingham Business Park, and it's really like they're really focusing on like what they can do further than the first thing, and I feel like that's going to become more and more important, especially with things like Brexit and with COVID and things like that, and actually looking at where those initial raw products are coming from and whether those are sustainable and how they're grown and whether that's sustainable. So I feel like supply chains is a big one that's coming up and becoming more prevalent because a lot of companies aren't getting away with greenwashing anymore. So we've had quite a lot of through Sustainability West Midlands, a lot of information come through about different businesses and what they're doing. And it's really interesting then when you have a research of them and you're like, oh, but their solar panels are being manufactured in X and X and X, and that's not being done in a sustainable way. Those workers aren't being paid what they need to be paid, and things like that. So I think that's going to completely change the whole atmosphere and environment of sustainability, because people are getting more inquisitive and looking at further than the first thing than them saying that they're doing this amount for sustainability.
That's kind of like encouraging to me, like to hear that though. But that is all the questions that we have from the Google form. So yeah, it was really nice to talk to you, Maddie. And yeah, hopefully everybody will have enjoyed this little segment.
It was cool.
And yeah, it was really great.
I'm excited to see what it looks like.
So hi everyone, today we are here with Lydia Dutton, who is the Sustainability Manager at the University of Birmingham. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you very much.
And we will be asking her some questions about working in the sustainability sector and generally about the sector. Holly, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So do you want to start off and just tell us about your career journey a little bit and how you kind of got to be in this role?
I can do. It's been a bit of a journey. I'll try and keep it concise. I think I started off reading geography at university back in the early 2000s and got to the end of my degree and actually didn't achieve as high a degree as I'd expected. And so I went through this whole kerfuffle where everyone was going into management consultancy roles and going off and doing really big things, and I really had to kind of search my soul as to what is it that I wanted to do. And if I'm honest, I didn't find the answer straight away. I went and lived in Spain for a while to learn Spanish, and then I went around the world travelling to kind of experience life in a different place using the Spanish. But when I came back, I actually found a role in London that was with a renewable technology firm looking at venture capital, so actually funding new concepts and ideas around sustainability. And that kind of just cemented in my mind that actually working both with organisations to support them in how do they move forwards and make decisions around sustainability and whether and how they can make decisions that are sustainable both in the short term for their short and medium term for their businesses, but also in making change happen in a wider societal perspective as well. Okay. So it was kind of a roundabout journey and not one that I imagined to start with, but actually in the end it worked quite well getting into that role.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about like what your role is at Birmingham as well?
Yeah, I can do. So I think with my role at Birmingham, I'm looking after kind of university strategy relating to sustainability. So looking at it from an environmental sustainability perspective and kind of our operations and delivery, because I sit predominantly within estates. So that's looking at kind of energy, water, waste, strategies relating to that, and transport and waste. I've said waste twice. But then I also am working to develop strategy around our university approach to embedding sustainability in the curriculum, embedding it into, or not necessarily embedding it, but bringing out the research that we're doing around sustainability so that we have kind of a coherent narrative relating to what the university is doing as a whole. And then there's a whole piece of my work, and definitely at the moment, is around engagement and engaging with staff and with students about both what the university is doing, an opportunity for staff and students to get involved in what the university is doing. So we've set up a Sustainability Ambassadors programme, which has been really well received, still growing, definitely not at your numbers for your Facebook group at the moment, but it's something that we'd like to get to. And then we've also launched something called Green Impact, which is a programme led by the NUS SOS, Students Organising for Sustainability, and that's providing tools to staff and students to embed sustainability in what they're doing, whether it's through their lab work, whether it's through the offices, or kind of even in grounds and gardens and catering as well. So it's a lot around engagement, a lot around strategy, and how do we embed kind of sustainability as an underlying principle to how we deliver at the university as well.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. I didn't even realise, because I finished at Birmingham last year, I didn't realise there was that much like going on like for sustainability, obviously, because I think a lot of it's happened like since I've left.
Yeah, well, actually, as you were talking, Lydia, I realised, so you said that you didn't get into, or that you didn't know what you wanted to do and you got into sustainability later. So you said that you did geography at university, and I know that can be related to sustainability, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So does that mean that you didn't really study sustainability or like the environment at university, or did you still?
I did.
Okay.
And actually my degree was combined both human and physical geography, and I did quite a lot of social geography as well. So kind of my dissertation was on Russia and kind of HIV and AIDS in post-communist Russia, which was really interesting, had a really inspirational tutor that meant that I kind of went down that route. But my other option for my dissertation was around kind of environmental campaigning and kind of the Greenpeace and the legacies that they're bringing with the campaigning they're doing. And part of me kind of looks back and thinks, what would have that been that turning point if I had done my dissertation on that issue area at the time, and then perhaps gone more into kind of that campaigning environmental sector kind of from the beginning, whereas actually doing my dissertation on Russia, it didn't necessarily then give me that grab at the end of it as to where I should move to. So I think that's an interesting point in my kind of university career, and where it didn't then take me into the next level of my kind of working life. But from the I guess one of the things that I'd probably say around kind of careers and sustainability in particular is kind of this openness to change and to try something that you don't necessarily know will work, and also to go with the flow. Because one of the I'd been at the venture capital firm for kind of like 6 to 8 months, and then I had started playing hockey with someone who we both got on really well. We had really similar ethics and approaches to life, and her company had started hiring people to be sustainability consultants in the built environment sector. And actually that was then the next step, was actually, well, our ethoses align. It would be really good to work with a business that is also aligned in that way. So I then joined into her organisation, which then led me to kind of 5 years of sustainability consultancy in a property services company, which was working with institutional investors, banks, building developers, organisations. It was a really interesting experience, tearing your hair out experience at times, but it was a real insight into kind of the corporate delivery of sustainability, so supporting on strategy again there. But I suppose the point of this moment is actually that kind of serendipity of you don't know who you're going to meet doing whatever it is that you're doing, and kind of that kind of openness to try something based on kind of people that you meet, and where you find kind of a connection with someone, going with it rather than saying, oh no, I'm quite comfortable with what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
That is really interesting, because we had another one of these interviews, we were talking about it, and I guess more than any other sector than I can think of, really, I guess sustainability, if you're working with sustainability of the environment, there is also like an ethos, like, you know, that the people that you are working with on like a fundamental level are quite similar to you and have like the same what am I trying to say?
Worldview.
Worldview that you do, which I think is quite special because you don't necessarily have that in other sectors.
Yeah, and I think that piece around you all essentially are trying to make the world a better place, and yeah, there's many careers where you can be doing very valued activities and roles, but you're not necessarily all pushing in that same direction. So I think that's a really unifying piece around being in a career in sustainability. And I think one of the other tips that I'd give, and I'm sure everyone in your network is already on this, if they're part of your network, is that actually getting out there and going to the seminars that are most likely online at the moment, but actually going out there and meeting people and getting to know kind of people in the industry, getting to hear what else is happening from both in your local area, but in areas that you want to go to. So if it's London that's your calling, getting to know what the networks are like down there. One of the things that I did when I moved back from London to Birmingham was realise that there weren't necessarily as many networking opportunities in the Midlands as there were in London, and all the events were happening in London, and just like, we can't be having this. So I set up a group called the Circular Economy Club, or at least the Birmingham chapter of it, which just gave me an opportunity to meet new people in the region, to develop a platform to talk about the circular economy where it hasn't really been discussed in big forums within the Midlands previously. And we've achieved some really good stuff. Both I've actually found another job through that networking route, and then also made some really good friends, as well as kind of building kind of a network of individuals across the region that are linked into businesses that you can always call on if you have a question on something to do with anything in the area.
Great. You kind of like, well, we've got a couple of questions from like Google form, but you've kind of touched upon like your own experience. But I wondered, like, if you're talking to someone who's kind of like just coming up in the business, what kind of experience, we've said, and education as well, what kind of experience in education do you think are a must for the sustainability sector? Or do you think maybe there's not like a specific route of education that you actually need to get into this sector?
That's a good question. I think one of the answers that I always have is you have to have a passion and an interest and a drive to want to make the change and be in the role that you're wanting to do. And so I think from an education perspective, you can't really learn that passion. I mean, you can obviously learn facts and figures that can make you then feel passionate about why you need to make change, but actually that's really important to kind of moving forwards in sustainability, I believe. But I also think that there are some credentials that are really helpful in the sustainability field that are really important to think about, and it's those such as joining the professional bodies such as IEMA, or from an environmental perspective, or CIWM from a waste management perspective, or the Climate Reality Project have been doing free programs of kind of education around kind of the challenge that the society is currently facing around the climate emergency. There's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. You've got the groups relating to sustainability professionals as well. So I think it's absolutely worth, and particularly if you're students at the moment, you can generally get really good rates if free to join those bodies, and you've got really great resources then around seminars and certification and training that would be really valuable to starting out in your career, and being able to put those on your CV. That's a really powerful statement. I'm recruiting at the moment, and I've had some really interesting CVs come through, and what's clear within them is that some people do have the passion, but they haven't then made that next step into getting kind of any formal training or even kind of informal training. And I think that's really what employers are looking at, is have you gone that next step to try and formalise what you're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult, isn't it? Because especially if you've kind of come from like a humanities background or just not a STEM background, you might not have the figures and like the certification to like back up what you actually want to get into, which is a lot of the case, because one of the questions that we did have was probably not for you, as you've come from a STEM background or a geography background, which is kind of like science, isn't it? Which was, what space is there for a humanities graduate or people without science backgrounds? Because obviously a lot of people who are in this field aren't necessarily science graduates, but obviously you are. So it is a bit difficult for those people to know like where to go to get these certifications to make it a bit more official to put on their CV, like you said. And like, to have passion is like one thing, but then to have like the actual documents to back up the passion is like another thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really interesting you're saying I'm a science graduate. I'm a BA, so I'm actually
really?
Arts. Yeah, so I didn't get a science degree, which actually I would. Yeah, but science has never been my thing, and maths neither. So it's actually being able. I feel very much that I've come from kind of an arts perspective. So I really think that that there's a huge space for arts, and that's very much because sustainability is about communicating and having a story that people can embrace and join you on that journey with. And that's not always what the science background people, that's not very good English at all, that's but that's not what they'll always be their speciality. And actually from an arts perspective, being able to have a story and a way of communicating is really important, and there's always space for that. And there's some excellent consultancies that specialize in that sustainability messaging, and so I think there's absolutely space, as well as the fact that being an arts graduate does not limit you to kind of making that step, whether it's through a master's, whether it's through further education around developing those skills that you may not have got within your arts degree as well.
So on skills, you mentioned certifications and things like that would be useful for people who want to get into sustainability to get, but what other skills that you think are the most valuable for a sustainability role?
I think being able to talk to anyone about anything and have a conversation is the first step in being able to deliver on many sustainability roles. I think there's certainly some technical ones where you actually will need the technical skills to be able to do kind of the deep energy analysis or the mapping systems or anything that goes into that detail. But I think from a skills perspective, it's having that personability skill to be able to engage with different stakeholders. And I think that's something that across my career has been really important, is being able to have the conversations with both kind of senior management, boardroom, exec levels, and then also having the conversations with the teams that are on the ground in the volunteering space. Both have very different perspectives sometimes, but actually there is a common theme of, again, that journey of wanting to make the world that bit better, a bit more of a better place, and being able to have those conversations is really important. I think the other skills is kind of, or another skill is again kind of that transparency and openness, which I guess links in with kind of that personability piece, is a lot around sustainability, is how can we make sure that we're being transparent and open from an organisational perspective, or kind of from a wherever you're coming from a work perspective, and actually having that within your skill set to be able to demonstrate and engage with people that you aren't trying to fool them, and then taking them on the journey as well is really key.
We may have kind of covered this already. I'll ask it again because this was a specific question. But what are your top tips for somebody who wants to get into the sector?
So I think my top tips for someone getting into the sector would be networking, getting out there to understand both who's involved in your local community or in your local region on sustainability in the issue areas you're interested in. I think getting onto, and that may be through LinkedIn, it may be going through events that you find that are available through kind of networks that you may already be part of. I think the other recommendation would be to look into training opportunities that are out there in abundance at the moment, to kind of have something that's quite demonstrable of your interest so that it can go onto your CV. I think there are a couple of things that are really important. And then I think just as an approach to being a sustainability professional, kind of having that passion and that openness and that drive to support change, but recognising that some organisations are not going to be where you want them to be immediately, and it is a journey, and actually it takes time. So I guess it's really tricky when we don't have that much time, but it's recognising that you have to get everyone brought into that journey rather than going full throttle. This is what we're doing and how we're going to do it, because you're going to lose people on the way, and the worst thing is having blockers to the challenge. So I think it's kind of the networking, it's some training, and then I think it's the kind of that recognition that you need to take people on the journey with you.
What tendencies and developments are expected in the next few years in the sustainability sector? Or what topics do you think will come up, and what will become more relevant?
Good question. I think as we get closer to 2030, there's going to be a real ramp up of conversations around the Sustainable Development Goals, and aren't we meeting them? And if we aren't, what on earth can be done to get us there by 2030? I think the key issues in the UK that are really going to be coming to the fore over the next kind of medium term are issues around water and water security, because actually it's something that there's a lot of focus on energy and zero carbon, and yes, that's going to be key to driving down emissions, but actually water is so important, and at the moment I don't think people really recognise the amount that we kind of waste and we don't account for appropriately, and so I think that's going to become an increasing issue. I think already rising on the agenda is biodiversity and the crucial role that plays in keeping the planet healthy, and the destruction that's happening at the moment to it. I think we certainly in The Guardian there's obviously that horror and worry and understanding that that's a severe impact on society going forwards, but actually I think that's going to become even more mainstream, and particularly with the lockdowns that we've had with the pandemic, the recognition actually of society that we need the green and we need the spaces for people to, both from a health and well-being perspective, but also from a flora and fauna perspective to thrive as well. So I think biodiversity is going to keep moving up the agenda. And then increasingly kind of this piece around just transitions, that it's not just about kind of making sure that the West is sustainable. We need to, I'm always talking about journeys, always talking about taking everyone, but we really do. It's not just about us moving forwards, it's about taking the whole world, and where that transition happens needs to be cognizant of everyone needing to move forward. So I think that piece around justice is going to be really key going forward as well.
It's interesting to see what other people are saying is going to be really important in the next couple of years, because it just gives people watching like a really well-rounded idea of kind of what to look into and what kind of to take these like short courses on. That's all the questions I think we have. But thank you for joining us, and hope everybody enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed those interviews. Keep your eyes peeled for the next instalment, and please let us know if this is something you enjoyed, because we can definitely do more of them if so.